So basically what we will be covering is, we will be covering this, like whenever you implement any SAP project, right? What are the key steps? What are your contribution? To whom you need to look out for implementing this project? And what are the discussions you may have with the users, right? So those are the key points which I will highlight in today's class. So what do we mean by ASAP, first of all? Okay, so okay, so now moving forward, right? So whenever you are having this ASAP methodology is being discussed, right? So the full form is accelerated SAP. That means what? Basically, and this methodology is used for the whenever you are implementing any project in the ECC landscape. S4 HANA, it has changed a bit, which I will come on later when we go through that class. So, so basically, it started with this project preparation phase. Okay. So, and then we have, let's say we have 4 phases before the go live, which is project preparation, business blueprint, realization, and final preparation, right? So these 4 phases are there before the go live. So let me just put some real example around it. So you will be able to. So
Yes, please.
basically, as we have discussed, right, we have 4 phases of the project, right? Project preparation, blueprint, realization, and final preparation. Now, let's talk about some of kind of, let's say a project which maybe you will be working on. So let's say you are working with, what was the example that we were, okay, so let's say we are working with Wipro Technologies, and basically what they have is, they have, so they are the SAP partners for implementation, right? And what they are doing is, they are setting up new branch office, or maybe in, let's say, Australia. Okay, so this is what they are setting it up. So that means they're expanding a new geographic location, correct? So what do they need for that? Tell me. Basically, what in order to set up a new maybe office in Australia, like we need to ask this question: will they be listed in Australia or not? Then also accounting standard, right? Correct. Anything else? Right, all these things are there. But since you are having like it's a global company, right? So they have some kind of financial year which is followed globally, and you can have one financial year which is followed locally, right? So let's say in Australia, if I just assume it's not correct, so if they follow, like generally they follow January to December, but let's say your company follows April to March, right? So what do you need to do in this case? The first thing which will come to your mind is, if if this company will be listed in Australia, right? Definitely you need a company code. As you can see, there are 2 kind of reporting requirements. You will need a parallel ledger. Now, is it a manufacturing location? No, it's kind of a branch office, and from there the consultants may be working on different projects, right? Because Wipro is not in the like let's say this technologies part is not in the manufacturing business at all, right? So basically that means you won't have you will be providing services, correct? So services to whom? To the customers, right? Which means you will be having sales and distribution. Like I'm just like talking about on the broader level, like in this, like you will have at least financial accounting over here, and you will also have this module of sales and distribution, right? When you are doing the sales and services. And what are you selling? Maybe if you treat this consulting services, like if you have inventory, then you need to also have the materials management, correct? Module. And if you're just doing services, like for example, and all the services are getting to cost centers, right? For example, this expense, right? You are billing to this cost center, and maybe all the profits are maybe booked under that profitability segment. Then do you need material? No, right? In those cases, the part won't be active, right? So now after this, right? So basically what happens in your initial project preparation step, we try to understand what is your project goal. So what is your project to set up the new branch office in Australia, correct? Then what we need to do is basically, okay, so what I understand for this is we are setting up a new branch office in Australia. Now the question is, do we have SAP solution in other regions? So this is a fundamental question which you might have, right? Are they having this SAP solution in the other regions or not? So if this is an yes, then what will be your next question? Do you want to have the same kind of structure rollout in Australia? Okay. If they tell yes, then it will be kind of a rollout project, right? So this is the most common type of project that we have seen, because most of the companies, they are opening new branches or maybe kind of new offices. So they're expanding their scope of business basically. So that's the reason most of the time they you will find that rollout project is something which is the most common type of project. This is the most common type of project. Now there is a trend which is I will also talk about the different types of projects. So maybe in the next class, where we will be discussing about what exactly is done in rollout, what exactly is done in upgrade and implementation and all those. So first of all, there is a rollout project, right? Because why? We have the same kind of configuration, but it will be done for a new region where you are setting up a company code. This is clear, right? Okay. So what do you need for that? So first of all, you would need to organize the teams who need to participate in this particular project, right? So from the consultant standpoint, right, you already know, like at least you need some person who is having the expertise in financial accounting, because the FICO consultants are needed for any project, you will need the FICO consultants. Okay. And since it also already have the sales and distribution module, let's say you also need the SD persons. Okay. SD or maybe the revenue management, those persons who are working on the revenue management, because Wipro will have some kind of cycle, right? For example, they're delivering the project over 12 months, right? And maybe they will do part billing. So when they complete, let's say the milestone one, like maybe some step of the project is complete, they bill for 20% to the client, then they bill for 40%, then they bill for 40%, some kind of that, right? So, so basically, and the revenue will be only recognized basically once the actual event occurs, right? So they might have some concept of revenue recognition which can come in. Okay, so maybe you need to, from the IT perspective, you need at least a financial accounting consultant and the sales and distribution. Then also there are the technical consultants. Who are they? ABAP and Basis. Right, so Basis team is basically, it's just like the IT support team in our organization who sets up our computer and all. So Basis is basically, they set up the backbone for the SAP system, like for example, like the servers, and then also they set up kind of the user access management. All those things is done by the Basis team, and any development or thing is done by your ABAP team. So at least from the at least from the consulting standpoint, you know who are the persons who will be working on this, right? There is no fixed number. It depends upon the maybe the volume of this project and also the complexity. Like for example, in some of the let's say some projects, right, it requires a person with different skills. Like for example, there is a project in which they have planned to use collections management and receivables management, central finance, AP, AR assets. This will be common, like the AGL, AP assets. All those things will be there, right? So they might need some FI consultants who have worked on these areas. Sometimes they might also need to split it, because sometimes the SD consultants can chip in more for the receivable management and the collection management module, right? So it depends. So, but at minimum, they would need at least the FICO person, because he needs to be well versed with the legal kind of requirements for that particular country, and also he needs to roll out that solution in let's say Australia, right? So he should be able to he should be well versed with the config steps around it. And yes, you need FICO and the technical persons. So these are the basic requirement for any project. Okay. Now the thing is so this is from the IT side. Now from the business side also you would need somebody, right? For example, okay, so first comes from the IT side. There might be also a project manager. The manager can also be a module lead, okay, in the respective area, and maybe he can also act as a project manager. So this is mostly the model which is followed by most of the service organizations. And then what they do is basically we also have the business team. So in the business team, who can participate? Those, because Wipro finance teams, they need to participate, like the finance manager, right? For example, they will decide, okay, what should be the maybe the chart of account that needs to be rolled out, which are the GLs they will need to use, what are the accounting concepts which they need to realize in this new entity code, and so on and so forth. There may be tax experts also who will be working with us. Like for example, in Australia, we have different types of taxes are there, right? So like what type of withholding tax and what type of input tax or output tax, those they will be coming in, right? So basically in this step, you organize your teams. Like you basically list out as a part of this project, what is your project goal, and then which teams are working in this project. Then comes your project charter. Okay, so this is the first document that you create for any project. So what does this project charter mean? So the project charter tells you about like all these things, like what is the basic purpose of this project, what is the how many consultants need to work, or maybe how many business persons need to devote their time for this project, how much with the ballpark, like estimated cost, or maybe the running cost for this project. Okay, at this time only we come across with a ballpark estimate for this project. Okay, so let's say we are having a S4 HANA implementation, so might be when we 1.6 million, or maybe ECC can be kind of 0.9 million USD project, which is there, right? So then what you can do is, on top of this, you will also maybe, so this includes your server cost, then software. So this is kind of the annual cost, right? For example, for the implementation at the initial stages, they need to buy the software, right? For that, they will have a cost, like what type of software is there? Like maybe it's kind of a like SAP has now basically, previously SAP was only offering on-premise. On-premise means like you need to physically own the server at a particular place, right? Now what they have is, it's kind of like, okay, so the fixed cost is less, but the variable cost is high. Because why? Because they are offering cloud, where basically on per user and the usage basis, they are charging the customers. Okay, and in the cloud also you have different types, kind of known as private cloud and the public cloud. So basically all these factors will come at this place. So you need to factor what is the server cost, how many consultants are required, and for how many days, how many man days, right? Then also you might need to understand what is the recurring cost, right? For example, how much is the maintenance cost that you need to pay SAP so that they can respond to your queries, or maybe also because there is also a support team generally whenever where there is a new client who is onboarded onto SAP, or maybe they are using it. So they also have kind of a application maintenance and support contract with them. So that is also a recurring cost which you need to factor. And if there be some consultants who need to work, like provide your go live support, so that also costs. So you will mostly talk about the cost to implement this project, which is kind of a fixed cost. And the next part which comes is basically your variable cost. That's good. So now at this stage, basically you prepare your project charter, you prepare your ballpark estimate, right? Which is basically the total fixed cost to implement this project. And then you chart out your implementation strategy. So the project charter basically details out what is the objective of your project. Okay. And you have a broad definition of the scope of the project. For example, what are the things that you need, right?
Okay.
And then you also have the duration of a project, Okay, in what duration it will be, because any project will have a start date and end date. So you will need to know the duration of the project, and based on that, estimated cost for the project, right? And definitely, which are very important, like because there will be some person's name which has to be stamped in your project charter, the project financer and project manager. So basically what happens is this particular person, anything related to the money, like whether you need to enable this new functionality, you have some additional cost, you cannot do that without the approval of the project financer. And the project manager will be the basically he will be liable to answer for any queries, or maybe any maybe there is a early delivery or a project, or maybe there is a delay in a project. He will be answerable to all these queries around that. So this is your project charter. So in the project charter, what do we have? The objective of this project, what is the scope of the project, the duration, and then you will also have the estimated cost of the project. So sometimes in the interview also, they ask like, okay, so maybe at what stage of the project do you start with the effort estimation? You can mention that we start in the project preparation phase where we do this kind of activities, and we create kind of a rough scope of this project, and then based on that, what are the activities required to be done by us? Based on that, we estimate the cost for the project, right? So it is basically so for like what happens is, it is just kind of a request for quotations, right? Which like maybe the client might ask for to implement this project, right? Now, the next part is we go to the implementation strategy. What does the implementation strategy mean? Implementation strategy means first you will define what are your milestones, right? For example, by this date, I need to have my requirement gathering. Then based on that, maybe some kind of document you need to prepare. I will come to that. What is that document? And then you will have the actual kind of configuration work, and then the testing work, and the data preparation. All these things will be there, right? So you prepare kind of milestones that defines your implementation strategy. Now you might have noticed sometimes the project managers, they kind of stagger their resources. Stagger the resources means what? Like from the day one, maybe the SD consultant is not required to come in, right? And even the FICO might not be required. So for the day one, they only invite the basis. Why they will do that? Because the basis will understand, okay, what are the system requirements, how much space they will, from their experience, they will estimate it out, which they need to put as a backup for the server, and then what do they need for the installation. All those things they will maybe look into first. Then comes maybe your FICO consultant, because he will be basically setting up the entity code, doing all the configuration around it. So maybe after the basis, maybe 2 weeks of time of the basis team, or maybe 1 week of time, and then there will be overlap with the FICO person, because FICO person will also tell like which are the other extensions that need to install. For example, the bank relationship management, or maybe kind of they need some folder for their interfaces, or maybe where you will load the file into the system via LSM, like yeah, whatever be the case. So so they need to specify also what are the additional functionalities that is required. So maybe you will rope in the so this is the implementation strategy, where they will decide at what point of time, and which consultants need to be onboarded, and then what will be their job function. Okay, generally what you have is sometimes there are quite kind of like they might have some system where they're doing the logistics, right, which they don't want to disturb, right, all the goods movement and everything. So what they happens is, once the logistics movements are posted in that particular system, that will interface into SAP, right? So they will have kind of a upload functionality, just as you have seen the LSMW, right? But with LSMW, it is used for the data migration, and also in course of the project also you use it. But what we do is there are different kind of interface tools which are available, which I will also discuss when we go through the realization phase, right? So the FICO consultant might tell that, okay, this is kind of one of the interfaces, maybe for the let's say you are having an entity in US, right? So you have a Vertex tax implementation package which needs to be installed, where you need to place the file in a particular folder which has been designated by the government, and from there the file will be processed for the tax process. Okay, so those kinds of things can come up from your consultants as well, who know this localization in detail, right? So, so basically, that will be our implementation strategy. So basically, implementation strategy we will define based on the project goal. What are the different milestones I have for my project? Whom will be like? What will be the onboarding strategy for the consultant, and what will be their job functions, right? And yeah, so basically in the technical requirements, as I have told you, they will analyze what are the system requirements, which are the product to opt for. Let's say they have options to implement S4HANA on-premise and S4HANA on cloud. So what is the benefits of each one of them? What is the recurring? All those things from the fundamental benefits also that will be discussed with the project financer. Because if you can imagine, like if there be a project financer, he might be the finance director. So he might not be interested in all the technical details about this project. He will be mostly interested in what are the additional capabilities that will be coming in with this project. He may be well versed of what are the functionalities which are possible in each system, and then he will be kind of based on that, and also the ROI, which is the return of investment on this particular project, he will approve this project cost. Okay. Generally, for the most of the SAP systems, what we have seen is the ROI comes around like, okay, in the ECC stages of implementation in the past, right? The ROI used to be around 2 to 3 years. They used to have the benefits for like basically actually the returns from this they like basically whatever the cost has been incurred for the project, they're able to recover in around 2 to 3 years. But with the S4 HANA, it has reduced to around like mostly companies are talking about 14 months to 20 months. So basically, if you have implemented this S4 HANA, then maybe they are able to recover the cost in this period. How and where that will also be coming up maybe once we go through those sections for that as for implementation. Okay, so this is the project preparation part clear? First of all, basically there can be rollouts to entities which are where like maybe countries which are very simple in their tax structure, or maybe they don't have much of the, like for example, if you take Hong Kong, right? Hong Kong is very simple, they don't have any taxation also, but they have one of the rules like basically any sales which is done to China or Macau along with Hong Kong, that they also treat as domestic sales. So those kinds of situations are there. There can be complex, like for example, for the India implementation, generally we take around 6 months. Why? Because we have a very complicated taxation system, which has to be configured in the system. And also there are different rules on which cases like we need to implement what type of taxes, and there are different rules of revenue recognition as well, right? So you need to factor all those stuff. So basically, generally it's around 3 months is the estimated time for completion of the rollout project, but it can stretch a bit further based on the complications for that particular country. Australia also, it will be around 3 to 6 months, although they have some complication, but it is not that much, which will, yeah, require more time. So far so clear, right? You understood what is done with the project preparation phase, right? The next phase is very important, which is the kind of the blueprint of your implementation, which is known as the business blueprint. So in this step, basically, you create a detailed description of what you will be doing in the project, right? So you will have a detailed description of all the business processes and the system requirements. So basically, this is a very vital document, and in this, right, you might need to do some input, like as when you work on this project. So let's say you are working as a team member in your project, right? And maybe okay, so it's not a very big project. So basically you have consultants who are working in multiple sub areas. I mean sub modules, like for example AP, accounts payable, accounts receivable, assets. These are the sub areas, right? So what you will be doing is, in this case, based on the okay, so what comes first is, okay, I need to explain. Okay, so what do we do is, as a part of your project preparation, you have defined the goals, right? Goals will be broken down to something which is known as requirements, right? Where do we collect the requirements? At this stage in the business blueprint, right? Basically, at this stage, you start with understanding of these requirements. Now, for our project, which we are talking about, right? What is the first question that we have? It's a new location, but do we have an existing solution, right?
Yes.
So that means we need to check what are the functional gaps, right? What do we mean by functional gaps? Maybe you have a solution which is available for the other countries. For Australia, what are the localizations which are needed? For example, we have already figured out there is a parallel ledger concept which is there. Maybe for the asset amortization also you need to work on something for Australia. Generally for the organization wide, they have some kind of standard process, but yes, there may be deviations even for the respective country, right? So in this, what you have is first it will start with your fit gap session to understand the gaps in the requirements for the rollout project and for the implementation project. Okay, so what is the implementation project basically? So implementation project means there can be two types. Implementation project can be like, for example, the client is not using SAP at all at the moment, so he wants to go on to SAP as a ERP software. So that will be, you need to set up all the things from the scratch, right? And then you can also have a kind of a system where the client is using SAP, let's say for the past few years, but they are not happy with what the output they're getting out of that. So they need an entire process re-engineering, right? So in those cases also what they will be doing is in the SAP terminologies, that is known as a greenfield implementation, right? Where all the processes which are there are redesigned in SAP system, and then they check whether the business will check whether it is suiting their needs or not. Okay. So coming back to the business blueprint, right? What is the purpose of this business blueprint then? So basically in the business blueprint, it starts with the project documentation on what is the goals and what are the modules which may be maybe configured. Then for each process area, you create kind of nodes, right? For example, I can create something, let's say, for one will be financial, maybe for, well, not the financial accounting, maybe organizational structure. So there can be some kind of convention, right, which will be followed for the organization structure, right? Then when it comes to the general ledger accounting, general ledger process, then you will have a journal entry, right? And the journal entry process there will be there. Then there can be a kind of uh, maybe recurring payments or utility bills, something like that. Okay, then you can have different options over here, right? Like for example, accrual booking.
Deferrals.
Yeah, then you have the foreign currency valuation. So these are all different process areas under your GL, right? Then you can have yeah, all this can be there in, so that will be coming here, yeah, in GL itself, in interest calculation, right? So basically what I intend to tell is you will be listing out each individual process areas. Then under the process areas you will have scenarios, right? So this is a very detailed document where you need to put through, like, okay, so under this process areas, what are my scenarios? And it can also go so what will be the structure on this is basically you will have the, let's say, the modules. Under that you will have process areas, then you will have the different scenarios, and for this scenario how will you ensure that it goes well, and which is the test plan, and under that you will have the transactions, right?
Yes.
Okay, so basically that's what we are doing. So first you create the project documentation and put the different individual scenarios that you may have. Then you assign the transactions to each step under the test plan, and so basically defining how the business process will run through. Okay, so let's say for your asset acquisition, first you will do You will ensure that the vendor is there from which you are buying this particular asset. You need to always make sure in AS01 you create this asset, what are the key fields which would need to be input over there. Then let's say F-90 to acquire this asset. Then you will again go back and check the asset, and you will check the capitalization date, the depreciation start date, all these are pointing correctly or not. Okay. So all those things you will list out as a part of your business process, and that in the test plan, and you will attach the transactions to it. Okay. And is it kind of a frozen document? Okay, so it will have versions definitely. So that means it's an ongoing document. And whenever, let's say, you have told that yes, you are implementing asset accounting module, but later on the business also informed, look, I have some kind of investment projects also which comes up uh, every quarter. So can I define some kind of process around it, right? So you can also maybe configure that for for your client. So basically you will be seeing how do we configure investment orders and so on. Okay. Then so basically it's an ongoing document, and also this document will contain all the test plans, right? For example, under GL, what are the scenarios and the test plan which you have? Under AP, what are the test plan? What are the, like, let's say in AP it can be kind of, you will test out for the check payments, whether you are able to print out the checks from the system or not, and then you are able to generate the like DME file for the bank transfer or not. All those things you will be testing out. Okay. It is very important, right? You have a requirement traceability matrix at this point. So what do we mean by that? Requirement traceability matrix. Ideally, it should have, but it can be sometimes the modules overlap, right? Example,
Yes.
like just imagine the procure to pay process, right? So you do that based on the business area, like the process areas. So
Yes.
it can be like organization structure. I didn't define, for example, the FI organization structure, right? So it will be the organization structure. Under that, you will have the sales organizations as well, the FI org structure as well, maybe the plant logistics organization structure as well. Then I will define the process areas. Let's say account to report. Account to report means what? How do you create? What is the protocols to create a new account? What are the journal entries which are booked? All those which starts with the account to report, all those process you will list out there. Then and under the account to report, you may not cover the subledgers. For the subledgers, you can go to procure to pay and the order to cash modules. Okay, so these are the process areas, like account to report or record to report. Then you have the procure to pay, then you have order to cash. So all these things are there. Okay, good. Times we
Okay.
call it as a account to report or record to report.
Okay.
That means right from recording the transactions to reporting the transactions, what are the steps that will be covered, right? Then you have a procure to pay. Procure to pay means like for
Order.
the purchasing process, which we have discussed. Then you have the order to cash, that also flow we have discussed, right? So that's all we have in the business blueprint, and this is the most important document for you. So everything, right? What we generally follow is we always follow a requirement traceability matrix. So means, right, for this particular requirement, we have this particular test plan, and with this test plan, these are the transactions which are used. So if you jot down the requirement traceability matrix properly, right, the chances of failure for any particular project is like bare minimum. So because anytime you will be knowing like, okay, business has requested for this particular change in this process area, and this process area having this test plan and the transactions, so it can never fail, right? So it will be always clearly documented, and you can go back to the business at any point of time. You have requested this, so that's why we had mapped it in this way. So so clear with the business blueprint. So so what are the things that we need to, I had already discussed about the how do you start with this business blueprint, which basically it will be kind of requirement gathering, or like kind of fit gap sessions, or the understanding the scope of the project, which will be the project manager will organize. Then what you will be doing is they will be sitting with the process experts in each area, right? And they will try to document the kind of solution for each particular process areas, right? So let's say you are working on the first with the AP person, right? So you will be working maybe with the global procurement lead to understand what is the procurement process, and then you will list out the process. Not only you will be, you can work with the consultant as well to list out the process in that particular region. So basically they will be owning the processes, right? For example, if you are working with the procurement lead, they will know, right? Let's say they have a company policy, like any purchase about 5,000 USD need to go through this approval, some finance manager's approval. So they will define that process. And when do you need to create a purchase order? And when do you create a direct FI invoice, right? And then what are your like preferred payment methods? Like for example, bank transfer is a preferred payment method. It depends again how much charges we are incurring. What is the periodicity where you need to do the reconciliation? That will be coming again as a part of the bank, like those treasury people when you work with them, right? So all those things will be coming under your business process analysis step.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, because you are, as to be flow is where it is basically defining the gaps, right? In as is, why you are doing this project, you must know, right? Like for example, in the as is, you do not have the payment files, let's say, being prepared by the system. You are inputting the payment file manually in the bank portal. In the 2B, you want to generate a file which will directly flow into the bank and the payment will be completed, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then you also do some very important thing. Okay, you have defined these processes, but it should not be changed every now and then, right? So there should be a change management also for your business process, right? So somehow, let's say there is one country, or maybe let's talk about Australia. In Australia, they have started with multiple banks, right? Now, if you want to switch from, you want to close one particular bank, what is the process? And then if you want to transfer funds from one bank to another, what is the process that you need to do? And then any changes in the master data, what steps need to be taken for that? So all those things you will be documenting in the business process document, and also any changes process also you will be documenting under organization management, change management, this section. Okay. Any questions with the business blueprint? So this is a very important to understand part. Like, so basically you need to know what is a business blueprint exactly. So in the BBB, basically you will consider all these scenarios which you can have, and then basically you will list out. Let's say you are moving from one bank portal to another. What are the steps that need to be done? So for business, it will be kind of a very comprehensive user guide which they can follow also. So so what the most of the process experts, right, what they do is whenever they go into the organization, first they look into the business blueprint. Okay, because this will give them the entire picture of what are the activities that are in the project, right? So now SAP also has some tools. So you might have heard about one tool which is known as a solution manager. Okay, so it's just kind of another module that we have. So where you list out all those phases of the project, like for example, project preparation, business blueprint, realization, final preparation. And under each of the steps, you define like what are the process area. Like for example, under business blueprint, you define what are the process areas, test plan, transactions, everything. And then whenever any changes are there, right, in a, let's say in a particular test plan, you document that, you mention that, let's say you add one step or delete one step or something like that. And then once the user have tested this and it has been approved, then only this particular process area becomes active under the solution manager. So SAP also strongly recommends the usage of this solution manager for the project. Now, which consultant does the setup of the solution manager? Again, it's the basis team. But the FI part, they like there will be clear cut, like it's a very easy to use tool where there will be clear demarcations of what are the project preparation, what is the business blueprint, and then you need to just maybe wherever you are making an entry, you need to check out that document and then again check in and then start your entry. Okay. ALM is also very widely used across multiple clients. Okay. So next, are you clear with the business? What is the purpose of business blueprint? Tell me. So basically, it's a very comprehensive document, and the purpose of this is to detail out what is the like exact scope of the project, and you will list out the process areas, the test plan, the transactions, and you will always tie up that with the requirement traceability metrics. Right now, we come to the phase of realization. So you have documented everything. What are the things that we need to be done for this particular project? And at the realization phase, basically, you are doing the configuration, the unit testing. And so you're here, you can see different types of testing term, right? For example, first configuration, you are very much clear, right? The steps that we were doing in the class. Then you go to the phase of realization. So the realization phase, what are you doing? So based on the requirements that you have, you will first do the configuration. Okay, let me go to the next slide, then it will be easier to explain. So here you have three different types of testing, right? Unit testing, system integration testing, and user acceptance testing. Okay. And also it can be what we have mentioned is like you need to document the solution in like there can be multiple iterations of a particular test plan based on the maybe where it follows. Like for example, you are having let's say you are having a test plan for the accounts payable module. Okay, so under this test plan you can have like an invoice, payment, on all the stuff, right? So you might need to do this invoice step multiple times when we are testing for the different types of payment, right? For example, one invoice you book for a vendor here which is doing a bank transfer payment, right? One for the vendor which is using a check payment, and so on and so forth, right? So that you manage in like for example, application lifecycle management in some companies. Also Solman can be used for that, to understand what are the steps or iterations of the testing plan you need to go through. So basically in the realization plan, what do we do? Again, it starts with the project management, where you review your base plan, like, okay, so what are like what are the configuration areas, who need to start first, what are there is one more important term which I have included, which is RISEF, and you will come across this term every now and then. So where basically it tells you like okay, SAP has already provided some list of reports, right? Then if you want to create some, or if the business needs you to create some additional reports, then you need to create the custom reports, right, for that, which is a part of the RISEF. Then you can also have some interfaces. What do we mean by interfaces? There basically we are maybe let's say for the material master. So only those let's say you're working in a pharmaceutical company, right? So what they do is only those material which has gone through all the diligent quality checks that are imported into SAP, right? So then you will have the interface to create this material only for those material which has passed the quality inspection test. The interface is something which is basically basically it is interfacing in or out of SAP. That means you are feeding data into this SAP using some tool. Ideally, the LSMW upload is also kind of an interface. SAP, but you are taking from Excel and you're loading it out. Right? Okay. Interface can be of any type. Like it can be iDocs, can be there. There can be. I will talk about iDocs also in today's class, because for the technical realization of it. And then yes, so we have reports. Then we have interfaces. We also sometimes do enhancement. What do we mean by enhancement? Enhancement means like let's say for customers, right? For customer, what you do is we have seen the dunning process, correct? And in the dunning process, what do? We send a reminder to the customers, right, for the payments, right? Now there can be a situation you might have realized sometimes, for whenever you have bills which are due, right? For example, for the credit cards, before the due date, you receive some notification over SMS, right? So those can be something kind of a custom enhancement which can be set up, where like, okay, you will have a setup. So whenever it's coming to the pre-due stage, right, within 7 days, the first SMS will be sent to the customer. requesting for the payment. Then there will be subsequent emails with a detailed format of what are the outstanding and all this. Running is a very powerful tool where you can also configure that the email can be sent to the customers as well as SMS. There can be different statements of account which can be sent to the customers as well. So those will be kind of enhancement, because how the system will send the instruction to the mobile. For that, right, they need to have some kind of code, right, which can recognize the sending to the accessing the smart messaging services and sending it to the mobile, right? Currently, we are only enabled the email functionality. So if you want to have the SMS functionality, that can also be incorporated. Now, what is known as functions? Functions are known as function module. For example, you might have scenarios where, let's say, you always, for any transfers, bank transfer you do to a European client, like maybe in Europe, right? You always need IBAN, right? So in the maybe in the bank in the vendor onboarding form, right? What they have is they have only provided the bank account number, right? So you can have the, like SAP already have provided a lot of standard function modules which can convert bank account number to IBAN, right? So those are the function modules which can be made use of. And then the configuration, you know very well what are the stuffs that we need to do in configuration, right? So as a part of the realization, we start with the configuration step, and also you can have reports, interfaces, and enhancement function. Then once you do this kind of configuration steps in the system, right, you sign off that, you review the baseline configuration with the business and get their sign off. Okay. Then you start basically these two activities runs in parallel, because whenever they sign off, right, they at least would like to see whether this functionality is working or not, right? So they will also ask maybe for the unit test result. Okay, tell me if this, okay, if this has been set up, how can I guarantee that this works this way? So you can show them that, okay, these are the unit testing results. That means unit testing means what? Like you have tested in silos, like in the individual systems. It is not kind of an integration test, but you have the FI person have tested, like let's say the GL accounting process and AP process, AR process, and all those areas, and he have created a documentation for that. Okay, what is the system integration testing? System integration testing means, like for example, you will have testing which is done by from the multiple streams. Like for example, in our scenario, we will have testing by FI as well as the SD teams, right? And also you might do some kind of stress test, like for example, at one point of time, how many orders are you able to receive? If I am doing some kind of order processing and maybe period and closing at the same time, what is the impact? So those things also you will need to just generally we test those as well, just like kind of a stress test onto the system, right? Just to check with the actual scenario. So basically, are you clear about unit test and system integration test? And then the final test will be basically now you have configured, you have tested at your end, it will be now tested by the users, which is known as the user acceptance test. At this step also, they do the regression testing. Regression testing means what? They work with actual volumes. For example, let's say there can be 10,000 of materials which are there. How much time is required to get the stock report for that? So those kinds of check will be in a document. Let's say I am having a 900 lines document. Are we able to book that or not properly? What is the time to do the clearing? So all those stress tests, which the business, based on the business scenarios that you may have, that you will do at this step. Okay, and so what we this paves the way for the next phase of the project, which is known as the final preparation. So final preparation basically, so what is the purpose of realization? Tell me. So based on the business blueprint, you have done the configuration, and based on the configuration, you have done the unit testing, and you have obtained the sign off. Then you do the system integration testing and the final integration test, right, in the realization phase. And then you go to the final preparation phase, which is basically yeah, like based on all your test results, right, you go back to the maybe the project managers goes back to the project financer, and then they have a review meeting. Okay, so let's say there can be some kind of threshold, like For example, there can be category 1 requirement, category 2 requirement, category 3 requirement. Category 1s are the most critical. So you need to ensure all the critical functionalities are working fine. So that will be one of the checkpoints. Then there can be some kind of category 2, which are important processes, let's say in the month end, which are required, and you need that to be also signed off. That is also. So now, but for the category 3, these are kind of, these are also kind of requirements which has been stated by business, but for some reason they are not working to as per the expectation. There are some gaps. So whether you will delay the project or you will allow it to move to the go live stage with this. So you have a threshold criteria in this case. Okay. So let's say we are talking about the accounts payable module, right? So accounts payable module, I have tested that for my bank transfer, it works well. And even the direct debit arrangement or the gyros, all these things are working well. Only for the electronic checks, right? Still, it is not aligned. Maybe the check printouts are not happening correctly. Then the business might ask this question, okay, how many checks do we have in a particular month? Is it the prevalent method of payment? Then the business will tell that, okay, let's say, for example, if their volume is low, they will tell maybe I have maximum 10 check payments in a month. So then that is considered, let's say, as a low volume. And then maybe they can, okay, so they can still go ahead with the go live, but this will be kept as an open point. Right? So this is the for the project manager. Now, what do we need to do in detailed final preparation? There, you might have noticed whenever we did the configuration, there were some, okay, so since we have only one client, right? So there were some requests, maybe some configuration which generated transport request, right? Yes. Transport request means which can be moved across the boxes. But something like the number range maintenance and all those things, those had to be done in the individual boxes. Right? Okay. So those will be the manual activities which will be required, that has to be documented. Okay. What are the critical portions in the configuration? Like, for example, you might have maybe noticed when we or might notice once you work for the project that once the transports are moved to live, they ask you to do a configuration check. So on this step, what you do is you need to the configuration it will be a display only mode, but at least you will be able to check through all this configuration node which you have done. So basically in the detailed go live planning, you have kind of a configuration check and the manual activities are documented here. Then there can be scenarios for projects like upgrade and implementation, right, where you need to do some data loads, right? For example, previously, let's say you are using Tally system for accounting, now you are shifting to SAP, then you need to do like the data load, right, for the past few years. Correct. Yeah, so data migration is actually a very kind of detailed activity. So where you need to, I have a kind of documentation on that. Yeah, so for the data migration, what you need to do is you need to prepare all your tools first of all. So let's say we are having LSMW tools for all the data migration, right? Let's say you are having for balance migration, let's for creation of the legacy assets. You remember the transaction code AS91, right? For the transferred assets, where you upload the asset along with the and the accumulated. Yes, right. Yeah. So that those tools you need to get ready with. You will have all the data, and you will also do kind of a test load in some pre-production client. Okay, so basically what they generally do is, for most of the organizations, they have a development system where you do all the configuration and the unit testing. Then you do the system integration testing in the quality system. Okay. And the user acceptance testing is also done in the quality system. Then you have one more system which is known as a pre-production, where you do all this data load. Okay, based on the data load, you get the sign off from the business. Okay, this is how the data is looking like. Please let me know if you're okay with that. So if they're okay with this, they sign it off, and then you get ready. So basically the same data you will be loading in even the live system. Okay, so then you have the go live, which is the final step of the project. So basically what happens is once you get with this go live step, right? So sometimes we have a clause for this go live. So after the go live, there can be some kind of hypercare, which is known as what does this hypercare mean? Basically, that means the system is very new, so there can be some kind of missing things that the business might notice, and you would need to fix them in a immediate basis. So we need to be on toes on this hypercare period, especially it can, like most of the times we have seen, it's a 24/7 support, especially during the hypercare period. It can differ. So like organizations like pharmaceuticals or healthcare, which are very kind of which are impacting the public lives, right? So on those cases, right, it is very important, like especially the hypercare period is very crucial. So let's say Wipro Technologies is doing the implementation, let's say for maybe one in, let's say British Telecom, right, BT, right? So now what they will do is they will configure the system for them, and they will offer 2 weeks of hypercare. So after the 2 weeks of hypercare, it can go back. Let's say general support vendor is, let's say, Infosys. So they will go back to Infosys for the support. So basically, Wipro will prepare as a part of the handover. They will give all this document, the business blueprint document they will provide. Then they will also provide the configuration document, the RICEFs as a part of the realization. All those things they will provide, and also the test result will be available to Infosys. So, and they will only chip in after the hypercare period is over. Or there can be sometimes an overlap where they work with the, maybe the Infosys consultants also work with the Wipro Technologies to jointly maybe monitor the solution which they are providing, and they just document that as a learning. Okay. So now we have understood the different phases of the project. Now comes the very important part. Where do we fit in? Right? Okay. So for the project, this part you are very much clear. We have discussed that in all the phases of the project, these two persons are working, right? Project financer and project manager. Okay. Then you have the solution lead. The solution lead works at the business blueprint and the project preparation phase. Okay. What is the like how the solution lead profile looks like? It will be roughly around maybe like for example, it will be roughly around the experience range of maybe um, like more than 12 years of experience he will have. So basically, he might have seen multiple implementation upgrades, rollouts, right? And he will have process knowledge for each of the modules. Okay, so that is the that is the expectation of a solution lead. Okay, then there can be the business process owners, as we have talked about. We have the kind of record to report process owners, then procurement process owners, and all those things. And there can be regional process owners as well. Okay. So what the process owners can kind of act as a kind of link bridge between your business and the technical people, because the technical people may not be understanding all the business terminologies, right? So the process owners will translate that to understandable terminologies for both business as well as the technical people. Here also you might see some of the places where you will be contributing is for the training. So basically, when you are working on the business blueprint, right, you are going through the each test plan and the transactions, right? So sometimes you might be interested upon building up the training document for the users.
Okay.
Okay. So you will be playing the role of a functional expert on this, where you will be going through all the scenarios and you will be documenting each step, what will be the input condition for each step and all those things. Okay. In the recent times, this role has been very common and it has been very popular, the data migration. Why? Because you might like if you see any like if you open up LinkedIn, right, and if you try to see like the kind of maybe the profiles sometimes which they are asking. So there is like recently it was not that much, but now there is a huge demand, or maybe also in most of the cases there is a data migration experts who are being looked out for. Okay, so what did they do? Basically, it's exactly the same. So they don't have a very complicated job scope. So what they do is they prepare all the tools. They just make sure all the tools are there. They prepare that the data is in the correct format, and they are responsible for upkeeping or maintenance of the pre-production client with the updated data. Okay, here I have introduced you to one more term, which is known as data archiving. So what does this mean? Basically, data archiving means every industry has its own kind of what I would say has its own convention where like how many years of data I need to store. So so in this, right, like let's say for the pharma or maybe the healthcare, it can be 7 years. Maybe for the IT industry, it is 3 years. Then like again, and who defines this? This is defined by the audit firms. Okay, the big four audit firms like for example Ernst and Young, yeah, PwC, all those, right? Like so KPMG, all of them basically kind of define. So they go for the corporate reviews, right? So in that, right? So they will have kind of a guidelines on how many years of data needs to be stored. Value management, like any kind of additional functionality you want to enable, something like that, you need to get in touch with the project sponsor, right? Now the another portion where yeah, the business process owners and the so basically these two are like all as I have told, like there are two parts: business process management and organization change management. So organization change management means like when do you need a new sales org, when do you need a new entity, when do you need a new business area. All those decisions will be taken by the business process owners in this step. And whether there is a change in a business process, like let's say shifting to from the bank transfers, shifting from check payment to bank transfer, something like a process change, right? That will be a part of your this business process management. Okay. The next part on which all of you will be a part will be the technical solution management team, where basically the solution lead or the solution architect will be kind of preparing like the broad solution overview for this project, and also he will be working very closely with the process owners for the business blueprint, right? And this I have already told, it is kind of, I think the bare minimum is 12 years for most of the organizations they look out for. And then you can have the module leads. The module leads generally they have an experience range of around like for example 5 to 10 years, right? The module lead, so they will be also they might have worked on the FICO implementation projects for multiple type of projects for some time, and they might have so they will be expert in those particular areas. So they might not know the integration part with all the other modules, and they may not be very much conversant with all the other areas, but in their respective areas they will be kind of experts, right? So those are the module leads. And then you have the configurators. Configurators can be like, it can be 0 to 5 years of experience, and also it can stage up. So for example, generally for like and the skills may get added, right, with each subsequent year of your experience, right? So mostly you will be working in this area as a module as a configurators, and later on you might transition to a module lead, right? And you can, and sometimes the business also requires you to work in these areas for preparing the testing document. Testing document is again done by kind of it is not something which is done by the senior consultant, because most of the time it will be a good learning for you when you go through all the scenarios, right? And you document it well. So you need to have good documentation skills for that, and the process and the functional knowledge in the trade. Clear? So the question from Kumar, is it clear at this stage? Which role and what are the activities? So next part is we have the application lifecycle management. For that, we have the application maintenance and support team who will be chipping in. So basically they are responsible. So the most common type of projects is a support project where you have existing solution which is already going on, right? But there can be some kind of hiccups in the, let's say at some point of time, you might see that like they have booked over depreciation for asset. How do you maybe maybe they want to speed up the depreciation of the asset? What will be the process to do that? Something like that. Maybe they have then to prepare some kind of what I would say asset reports, and let's say introduction of a new depreciation area. So that can be also dealt with the support team who is doing application maintenance and support. The initial stages, like okay, when you go into this project, right? So this is the most common project. But I have also seen, for example, when I first started, right? So that time also they were like we started with we started with something like a support project, but at the same time we had to do kind of a sub module implementation where like it's not very complicated, like a special purpose ledger which we had to implement, and you need to, so that those are where the opportunities which you need to grasp for. You should not leave out those options whenever there is a opportunity to do kind of a sub module implementation, or maybe you need to roll out a solution, you need to work in a rollout project and all those. You should always try to grab them. Even in the training part, I think the training part also clarifies a lot of doubt, because you might have going through, when you are going through the video and then when you are trying this in the system itself, right? Basically what you are doing, you're applying the training which you have learned, right? So it also helps, like as long as you have the system access, if you can just document, like you try to create kind of a test plan and process document, right, by yourself. You give it a try. Maybe what I can do is I can also put some examples in the discussion board. Maybe you can try on those. Yeah, so for the junior roles, yes, definitely there are training, but like for us, right, when we go into the system, because they generally for the senior roles, right, what they do is most of the time they have a kind of a system landscape overview and the process, and we interact with the process owners. But for the system, right, they don't have any training for the senior role. What they do is they just ask us to go through the documents, and based on that you prepare kind of like your understanding, and then you can present that maybe to the project director or something like that. Okay, but yes, for you, like when you join as a junior consultant, definitely there should be some kind of training or onboarding, because how you will know directly the system without being briefed upon how it has been set up. Okay, so basically you have two levels of certification. So the associate certification, right? Once you clear this associate certification, right, you should be eligible for any kind of associate role, which is kind of a junior to not a junior consultant, but it can be like means like when you are already certified, right? That means you have already gone through all those process functional areas in detail, and you know end to end of it, right?
Yes.
You know a good you have a good grasp of understanding. So generally they are taken in as a kind of a I would say kind of junior to like now, so around 0 to 3 years of experience around that kind of role.
Okay.
Yes, so there is always, and also SAP highly recommends to always go with certified consultants for all the implementation projects. Okay, then you have the test management team. So here also you sometimes you need to work with the super users to prepare the test plan, right? Here, so it is this training and the test management is something which is kind of coexisting. Sometimes the super users also prepare the training document, or sometimes the consultants also work with the super users to prepare the training document. And cutover management, as we have discussed, it is at the final preparation stage where you list out what are the kind of configuration checks, what are the manual configuration activities, what are the data loads which need to be done in the system. All those things are checked at this point. Is it clear? So I think that helps you with all the different types of roles which you may have in a project. right? And you are able to understand the project life cycle also, like what are the steps in which the project is implemented, which are the documents which are done in each phases of the project, and yeah. So yeah, I think this particular knowledge might be helpful for you, especially when you appear for the interviews also. You just maybe go through this part in details around it, and yeah, so this will be kind of uh, kind of your one-stop reference whenever you're going through a project. Okay. Okay, so now, so basically we have like which section did we complete today? So the portion that we have completed is this one, the ASAP methodology. Then we have gone into the business blueprint, like what type of estimates are there in the design, right? What are the things, like for example, the process areas which you need to configure. I will also maybe pull up some kind of like basic functional specifications document so that you know how that looks like, right? And I have discussed about all those, like that different types of test plan and the script, like and the UAT, right? Which you do. So the test plan is basically test plan will also have your test scenarios, right? And the test script will be in mode, like let's say the test plan is test out the invoicing process. And in the test script, you have one test script for testing the invoices for the local customer, invoices for the maybe the non-trading customers, and then for the foreign customers and all those things. Detail on that. So it is a drill down into just when we see FS10 and we drill down into FBL3 and right. So test script is something like that into the test plan.